Hello ladies and gents, welcome back to part 2 of this two-part video on radials, VORs and nav aids. I am here in AirCharts. This is simply aircharts.org. Pretty much this is where I always go to get my aircharts for SIDS and stars and stuff. This is easier for me than the NATS site, NATS site, because the NATS site is just, there's so much information, you know, it just kind of confuses you. So, aircharts.org, all you do is you just put in the code of the airport that you want. This is Edinburgh's code. You just hit Find Charts, and then here at the side you get Edinburgh Air Charts. You just hit the little plus button like a filing system, and there we get a drop down of all of our relative charts. Or the one chart that I am going to use, in fact it's going to be a SID, not a star, like I said in the last video, in part 1. I got that wrong, it's actually a star, a SID, sorry. So if I then go into the SID file, you'll see the 3 that is listed, and the one I want is the Grice SID. So if I just click on that, that's going to open up. Okay folks, if you have a look here, you can see this is a basic flight plan of waypoints, and what a SID and a star is it is the beginning and the end of your flight plan. It is the beginning waypoints that connect the airport that you're taking off from to the first waypoint of your flight plan, and the star is the one at the end. So SIDs, stars, just in case some of you were a bit foggy. Okay, so this is the Grice waypoint here, and here's Edinburgh, and we're going to be doing the Grice 3 Charlie departure right here as it's named, and there's a few things just to note here. We'll be taking off from the airport here, and we'll be flying directly to the Edinburgh Uniform Whiskey NDB, and then as soon as we turn across over that, we'll be taking a right-hand arcing turn to then track the radial, the 353 outbound radial of the TLA VOR. And as we track that outbound, once we get to distance 32 nautical miles away from the TLA radial, VOR, sorry, we then start to do a left-hand turn to then go over and intercept the 348 radial. We were on the 353, we want to take a left-hand turn to then intercept the 348 radial. And then we follow the 348 radial all the way out to Grice. Little warning here, do not climb above 6,000 until instructed by ATC. If we go up to the top of the page, you'll see that transition altitude is 6,000. Those are our frequencies, but we won't be dealing with ATC or anything else today. So down at the bottom of the page you'll see the VOR that they mention. They mention the frequency to it, and they show you the 2 radial arcs as they come up, and those are the ones we'll be tracking to be able to do this. And then down here at the bottom has got some very helpful information for us. Grice 3 Charlie departure, runway 24. Climb straight ahead to the Uniform Whiskey NDB. At Uniform Whiskey NDB, turn right onto TLA VOR radial 353. At TLA distance 32, turn left to intercept TLA VOR radial 348 to Grice. Cross TLA distance 33 or above 4,000, not sure, at or above 4,000, that's probably, no, at or above 4,000? Okay. 3.7%, not sure what that percentage means. Cross TLA distance 38 nautical miles above 4,500. Cross Grice at 6,000. Okay, so if you go back and look at the chart, we'll see. Take the right-hand turn onto the 353 radial. Distance 32. Start your turn. At distance 33, we should be at 4,000 feet or above 4,000 feet. And as we get on to the 348 radial, at distance 38 away, nautical miles away from the TLA VOR, we should be at 4,500 or above, and then, and then at Grice, we should be 6,000. So that is a basic breakdown of a SID. And of course, for those of you who fly IFR, it's not really, all of this detail isn't really important as much, because you're sitting there in your 737 NGX and all you do is you plug in the runway you're taking off from, and then in your arrivals or your departures page in your FMC you just plug in the Grice 3 Charlie departure, and then your first waypoint of your flight plan would probably be Grice. So you do this SID, and then from Grice you go on your airways and waypoints to your star, and then you land wherever it is. But you don't really need to know all of this information because it's all contained in the FMC for you. And when you plug that in, the 737 NGX or any other add-on or plane that has a proper working FMC with these SIDs and stars will just take off. All you do is hit the autopilot and you watch your plane follow this lovely little magenta line, and it does all the banks and the turns, and it does all the tracking, and it does all the altitudes for you. So it's, well, and that leaves you to then concentrate on other things like ATC vectoring or checklists, or whatever else that there is to do in a 737 NGX, which there is a lot to do. That's why there's two of them, two pilots. So, but that's basically how I'm going to track this manually. I'm not saying that manual tracking of SIDs and stars is what is supposed to be done on VATSIM or is even done in real life. I'm not sure, but I'm just doing this as an example of the use of VOR radials and how useful they really can be, because what they do is they literally are giving you an exact point in space that you can lock onto and navigate from. When they say distance 32 away from the TLA radial, TLA VOR on the 353 radial, they mean that exact point in space, and so you can very easily navigate your way if you know different VORs in the area and their radials or their frequencies, and also DMEs and NDBs also give an additional detail in your navigation. So that's our basic SID. So let's go over to Plan G now. Here we are at Edinburgh. If we have a look, here's Edinburgh, and here is the Uniform Whiskey NDB that we were talking about. So we'll be taking off. Let me just right click and have a look at the airport diagram. Airport diagram, taking off from runway 24. We will be flying direct to the Uniform Whiskey. Let's just start flight plan there. Right click, add Uniform Whiskey to plan, and then if we pan up slightly, we should see Grice way up here. Right click, add intersection to plan. So that's a basic direct to Uniform Whiskey and then direct to Grice. But we won't actually be doing that. So let's delete Grice. Yes, delete and delete. Let's actually just delete everything. Delete waypoint. Okay, so that's the way it's going to work. But first, let's go and get our VOR radials. If we go down, the two different turns or legs on this SID are all going to be done off this one VOR called TLA. Ah, lovely T. Right click, show radial. Now let's go back to my chart. Let's see what radial we need. We need the 353 radial. 353. And we need a distance. This is where the distance meter comes in helpful. It's good. Distance 32. So let's go 32 miles. Hit OK. Okay, look at that, lovely. What that is given us is the radial, and you can see that the radial crosses the Uniform Whiskey NDB pretty much almost bang on. So as soon as we pass that NDB, we will also be tracking the 353 radial as we're coming towards that. So as we go over the Uniform Whiskey NDB, we will actually see the VOR indicator or the radial on the nav1 swing from one side to the other. And as soon as that happens, we'll start making our turn. We'll do a rate 1 turn. I'll show you how to do that in the Twin Otter. To the right, and as we come around, we'll want to track this radial all the way out to this point here, which is distance 32 nautical miles from the VOR. and then as soon as we hit that, as soon as we see 32 nautical miles on our indicator, we want to then take a left-hand turn to track. Let me see, the next radial is 348. 348, and we want a distance of 38 nautical miles. Oh, that's not 300, 38. Okay, and that's given me another radial there. And for some reason, in Plan G, the radial that it's showing me actually is not going to go direct to Grice. I have no idea why. I'm not sure if it's a Plan G problem that, I mean, if you look at the chart here, the 348 radial is shown as going directly to Grice. But on Plan G, you can see the 348 radial. Actually, Grice is almost directly north of the end of that radial, not over here. But you know, it's not that much of a problem, and as long as we know, you know, that difference, that should be fine. So we'll be taking off, turning, and then as we get to 32 nautical miles, oh my goodness, look at that! What's that doing there? There's actually a waypoint for the TLA 32 nautical mile and the TLA 38 nautical mile. The VOR radials are off. Look at that. Okay. I actually just realized that. Show start. Okay, we can actually plot a flight, a course then. Add NDB, and then we go up and add the intersection, and then we add that intersection, and then we add that intersection. There we go. So yeah, it actually, if I had the right icons, whichever ones they are, turned on, you can actually see they have plotted the different VOR distances so that you can actually fly. Okay, that's cool. So I'll be taking off, turn onto the radial, and then onto this radial, and then up, using these VORs. So let's just minimize that. No, actually, yes, altitudes as well. Okay, let's remember those altitudes. Stay below, no, by the time you get to TLA 33, you need to be 4,000 or above, and then TLA 38, you need to be 4,500 at least, and then by Grice you should be 6,000. So that's a pretty gradual climb, a very gradual climb, and the Twin Otter climbs like a homesick angel. It really does, you know, punch up through the stratosphere. It's very powerful. It's a STOL aircraft, short takeoff and landing, whatever that stands for. So it does have a lot of power. It's a turboprop. So knowing this information, let's jump in the airplane and let's give it a good bash, see what comes up. I may not be able to track it all perfectly, but it will hopefully give you a good idea of the theory of what's going on. So okay folks, welcome to the aircraft. This is the Twin Otter Extended by Aerosoft, and this is the livery for my Fly UK virtual airline that I use for Scottish Highland flights up to Westray and stuff like that. So let's jump in the cockpit. I will be doing much more in-depth stuff on this aircraft fairly soon, depending on how quickly I can get my shared cockpit set up with FS Flight Lessons. He's going to be my co-pilot on this. I'm not going to do any checklists or anything. I'm just simply going to take off and I'm going to fly these radials. So let's just get some things set up. This is my ADF indicator. So I want to get the first leg is going to be to Uniform Whiskey NDB, just direct runway heading. Let's actually just check my wind. Do I have any wind? No, I need to connect my Plan G. And okay, that's fine. What I need to do is I need to plug in my NDB number, which is 368. It's just... Is it raining outside? Yes, it is raining outside. Look at that. Welcome to the 1st of January 2014, folks. 68. let's put that in 368, and that should move. Yeah, as you just saw. Right, that's pointing directly ahead of us, which shows that it is actually directly in the runway heading. Now, there's two different things I could do here for this VOR tracking. Let me just make sure my track R is centered. Yeah, I think it is. Actually, is it? Yes, it is. Okay. There's two different things we could do. We could actually only use one, we could use the nav1 indicator solely, completely, or we could use nav1 and nav2. What I'm going to do is use both the navigation instruments to track the same VOR, but they'll both be tracking individual radials. So whenever I finish tracking one radial and bank left to track another, I won't have to actually be fiddling down in the cockpit here. I can actually be just swap my view from VOR1 to VOR2. So to set the VOR frequency, I should just change my view. There we are. That's better. To set my VOR frequency, I bring the nav1 instrument is actually set using the GPS, and the nav2 is actually set using the actual radio, the Bendix King radio stack. Right, so let's just dial in 133.8. That's what it was. Hit that button, and that will send. There we go. So you can see that the needle has changed, and then we'll also set that same frequency into my nav1 or nav2. Sorry. And that has changed as well. So let's go back to my cockpit view. Let's go set these radials up then. For nav1, I'm going to set the first radial of 353. So let's just bring 353. Okay. So, and then nav2 is 348. Five, 6, 7, 8. Okay. So theoretically, it should all work now. So theoretically, we'll fly runway heading. We'll fly this heading to this NDB, taking into consideration there's basically no wind. We've actually got a slight tailwind, but that's fine. So we'll fly direct to, and as soon as this indicator flips round, we'll also see the needle here on the nav1 go from forwards to backwards, which shows we've crossed over it. We'll do a rate 1 turn to the right to track this radial, and then when we get to we are 27.4 nautical miles away. When we get to 32, we start making our turn. At 33, we should be 4,000 feet, and I'll just continue from there on. So without much further ado, let's go. Release parking brake, and I'll just spool up. Pull back to about 75% throttle, because we really do not need a lot. I mean, this thing climbs like none other. Let's just trim. Okay, all is going well so far. Got a very nice steady rate of climb. And I mean, to become more comfortable with navigation, you don't need ATC, you don't need other traffic getting in your way. It can just be you in the world and no one else around, and you can just have fun learning this. So I mean, I've had a few people recently asking me, you know, I found it really difficult, and you know, it's such a learning curve. And yeah, I totally agree with you. It was for me. That's one of the things that prompted me to come and make these videos. for you folks, because I have exactly the same problems that you do. I mean, it's hard for everyone, but you need to remember just to learn at your own pace. Don't throw yourself into the middle of something that you just can't handle. You need to do it gradually. Do it in your comfort zone. Okay, let's just have a look at that indicator. That VOR needle is gradually coming towards us, and once it crosses over, you'll see our ADF needle will flip over or flip around to point south instead of north, and that is when we will make our first turn. I did put on the anti-ice, so I think the windows just have some very little fogging going on there, as you can see. I've really started to love the Aerosoft add-ons. They really are good. I've got the Airbus X as well, Aerosoft Airbus extended, and despite being an Airbus, they have modeled it very nicely, and it is lovely. I don't hate Airbus, actually. I mean, I like Airbus. I like Airbus and Boeing, both together. I have nothing against Airbus. Right, so 3,200 feet, we should really start watching our rate of, oh no, actually, yeah. Okay, crossing the NDB now, as you can see. Right, let's start our rate 1 turn. And the rate 1 turn is whenever our turn and slip, when our little indicator reaches its left position, which is just about there. That's a massive cloud we're going to just be engulfed in. Oh, watch, rate of climb, and speed as well. We're quite fast. It's because we're not climbing. Okay, really got to watch that. Okay, watching my turn indicator, or my attitude. I don't know what that's called. My gyro, yeah. Trying to get that centered on her. There we go, that's better. And you'll see the arcing curve that I'm doing right now in Plan G. Oh, whoa. What was that? That was weird. Okay, coming around, as you can see, my nav 1 indicator now is... I'm going to level out. As you can see, I'm just going to start tracking that VOR now. 4,000 feet. Right, let's stop climbing now. Or try to stop. There we go. Very short climbs now. Let's just pull back my throttle a little bit more. And I'm right in the middle of a cloud. Just have a look at that needle again. It's almost tracking. I'd say we're another 5-10 seconds. Okay, let's call that tracked. We are now on the radial. Now let's turn and let's line up that radial. Okay, now let's just check. 29.3 nautical miles out on this radial. We need to be 32, so not long now. A little bit further left. You can see our radial is... Whoa, we want to be above 4,000. Start climbing, A little bit more, come on. And it's not an exact science. It's not as exact as an NGX flight path. I mean, an NGX would be on these numbers. It would be analyzing these figures. It would be doing this and be bang on every time almost, even with wind factors and wind components. No, climb, you silly thing. I was in the middle of the cloud. I couldn't see. Right, 31 nautical miles away. 32, right, 32 nautical miles. Let's start my turn. start my turn. I need to be higher. I don't need much of a turn here. The chart did say turn to 260, but that is too drastic a turn. So I'm not going to turn to 260. I'm just going to turn about 45 degrees. And at 33, yeah, boom, I've just passed 33 nautical miles. I need to be 4,500, so I'm a little bit low, so I need to be higher. 4,500 is easily reached though. Whack in 100% throttle. And these turboprops really are very good at doing what they need to do. Okay, now I'm not watching my nav 1, I'm actually watching my nav 2, which is just there. Okay, let's just level out now. 34 nautical miles. My next mileage indicator needs to be 38. Just tracking that radial again. Lovely day. The clouds are lovely as well. Okay, that radial's coming into, we're about one more degree off. As you can see, each dot I believe is a degree. So if the needle is say two dots away from being in the center, you know that you're 2 degrees off the radial, or 2 radials away from the radial you should be on, if that makes sense. Oh my goodness, I just busted 6,000. Okay, ATC would now be screaming at me. See this thing, just you take your eyes off it for a second and it will just climb like nothing. And nothing is holding it back. Okay, getting close to the radial now. Yep, approaching TLA 38 unnamed. Approaching, we're on 36, we need to be 38. Okay, I call that pretty much almost on that radial now, so. Just do my turn. Let's just turn that to 348. Let's just use nav 1 because nav 2 actually you're not watching. You can't actually see your own heading on that one. You can, this one you can. Okay, let's just make that turn. Okay, 39. I should be 4,500, and I'm above 4,500. At or above 4,500. This will not look pretty on Plan G. This waving around. It's a bit like the last part 1. It just didn't really look very well done. But that's what practice. That's what that is for. Practice. Practice makes perfect. And I haven't done this too many times. I've done this more than once, of course, to become familiar for this for the video here for you guys. But I mean, if you did this regularly, this kind of navigation, you would be much better at keeping everything where it should be, keeping your speed accurate, keeping your altitude accurate, keeping your heading and your radials all being tracked lovely, and it would look much nicer. Okay, I'm still not on that radial. 42 nautical miles out on that radial now. I'm just turning left slightly. Oh, a little bit of turbulence there. And we've pretty much reached Grice. Let me actually just check where Grice is. Yeah, we've reached Grice now. Okay. And that is tracking something a little bit more complex than part 1. You can see how this is supposed to work. So I mean, you could come in here dead of night, absolutely no light anywhere. Totally IFR, and you could fly a SID or a star using this method of tracking radials and tracking tracking the distances from the VORs as well as nav points and so forth. So lots of fun, lots of things that you could experiment with, and it was very exciting to me because it shows me that you don't need the NGX to fly proper airline flights or anything. You don't need an FMC. If you understand the basics of navigation, and if you go back to the roots of the theory of how things work, you can actually fly just as well in a plane like this, or even a World War II Warbird or something, as you can, you know, in an NGX. So, yeah. So that was just a short SID that I flew for you, and let's just hop back into Plan G just before I leave you, just to see the flight path that we did. So I'll see you in a second in Plan G. Okay folks, so welcome back. Here we're in Plan G. Now you can see the track that we actually did. Took off from Edinburgh, tracked to the Uniform Whiskey NDB, took a right hand turn, and that, as you can see, that's a fairly smooth arc. I tried to keep it as close to a rate 1 turn as I could. I probably could have turned a little bit, kept turning a little bit to intercept that radial a little bit quicker, but there we are. Intercepted the radial, as you can see, drifted a little bit, but was going in the general direction. And as we reached this point here, which was roughly 32 nautical miles away, took a left-hand turn and went to track the 348 radial. Once I got to the 348 radial, I pretty much tried to track it all the way until Grice, and just past Grice, as you can see, the VOR radials here in Plan G look accurate. So it must be the waypoints that are slightly off in Plan G, because the radials, in FSX, I was following the radials as accurately as I could, as you saw. And they have Grice as there and not there. So I think it's the waypoints that are actually slightly off as opposed to the radials of VORs. So that's the difference that you saw there. But yeah, that general, you can see that general magenta line working there. So if we go back to my air charts, that's basically what it was supposed to look like. Of course, the air chart, it looks a bit more squashed, and it doesn't really have the same exact angles and look to it, but it is physically a SID. So that's basically what's going on. So folks, hope you enjoyed this short little part 2. If you enjoyed this kind of video on the basics of VORs, navigation, nav aids and stuff, let me know, because I'm certainly looking forward to learning more in-depth stuff like this, and practicing it in the months and years to come. So from me folks, that's pretty much it, and catch you.